inches of rain here.
Wow.
Those rates could certainly be higher in pockets.
Right.
So flooding is a concern, and you will see hurricane force winds, certainly hurricane force wind gusts. So in addition to the flooding concern, you've got the winds even though you're set farther inland. Now the storm surge, that's not going to get that far inland, but it's something that's going to be serious for folks in Tallahassee.
Yeah, that is really good. Bob Johnson writing in from Dade City saying that lights went out around 3 this morning. Is that a shock? I hear lights going out in Dade City.
It's not going to surprise me. There probably will be some localized power outages, not widespread.
Good.
But certainly no one in this area will surprise me if you lose power for a couple of hours at some point during the course of this storm. Not going to be a days long event. But yes, the lights flickering, going on and off, not going to be a surprise. And even folks inland, because we're going to see these showers and storms moving through, one lightning strike, can pop that. So be aware.
Well, I'll let Ashley kind of take over, give another update, and I will see you guys on the broadcast.
Alrighty, guys. So let's talk about. I'm just kind of going to scroll through and see what we're dealing with right now. So impacts to the Bay Area. This is going to be pretty broad brushed, but just kind of what to expect here. So if you're along the coast, coastal flooding is a concern, but minor. We're not forecasting ridiculous storm surges here in the Tampa Bay area. That's going to be from areas north of Citrus County. What we should expect, higher than normal tides, some storm surge, likely in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 feet for the Bay Area, maybe in some spots as high as 4 feet. That goes up as we get up into Citrus County, and that's why evacuation orders were issued for Zone A in Citrus. Winds, not going to really be a huge problem for us per se. It'll be a windy day, probably getting those gusts between 25, maybe up toward 35 miles an hour, but just shy of tropical storm strength. And gusts along the coast that do hit that mark, 39 miles an hour, that's pretty likely. And then additionally, we've got some isolated flooding concerns, and that's going to be in these bands of heavy rain that are going to be moving through. And if I go to the next one here, you see we have those showers and storms moving through the area right now. I'll go ahead and zoom you in. Pinellas, we've been seeing this for several hours now, and that's actually, we're kind of located right here. We're going to get that rain coming through our neighborhood in the next few minutes, and this is slowly going to spread inland as we head through the day today. Areas west of I-75, certainly for the next 6 hours, we're going to be the focus in terms of these bands bringing heavy rain to the area. As we shift toward the afternoon, then we add the areas to the east. But the heavier rainfall totals with this are likely to be certainly through the day today, west of I-75, but anyone could see some localized flooding concerns from this, kind of dependent on where you're located, how high your elevation is, and it's very topography dependent. Some areas of Pinellas County are quite high and not really prone to flooding. Some areas around Tampa Bay, kind of a bowl. We kind of talk about Bayshore. Every time it rains, it floods. We see that in Shore Acres. So there are some communities that are going to have problems from flooding as a result of this. So something we're going to keep monitoring for you, but we are not, I want to stress, not seeing the brunt of the storm. That's going to be up into the Panhandle, and that is from multiple things. The first of which is storm surge. And that's what we evacuate for. When you see evacuation orders along the coast, it's for storm surge flooding. And here are where we have the warnings that extend west of Panama City. We've got watches all the way to the Alabama state line, and then even into the Tampa Bay area, we have storm surge watches in effect. We're expecting our sea levels to rise between 2 and 4 feet, depending on your exact location. Up into the Big Bend area, kind of south of Tallahassee there, those numbers are much, much higher. In fact, 9 to as much as 13 feet in some places. So that's going to be the biggest concern for the worst damage, especially in regards to flooding. And on top of that, then they've got hurricane force winds that they're going to be dealing with as well. For us, there you go, 2 to 4 feet, maybe as high as 6 feet in Citrus. Probably plan on 4 to 5. Except for, a few localized pockets. But into the Bay Area, yeah, we're going to see sea level rises enough to cause some coastal flooding. So something we're going to watch for you throughout the day today and into tomorrow. That's when we're going to feel the impacts from this. By Friday, this has moved on, and the Bay Area can relax. It's all over and done for us. Those waters will go back. For areas of the Panhandle, this is something they're going to be dealing with for weeks, months. This is a long-term recovery thing from a storm this significant that they're going to be dealing with. Again, that's not the case for the Tampa Bay area, but you know, we're watching this one closely because there are a lot of folks that, you know people up in the Panhandle who had to leave. You know, even something as, you know, minor in the grand scheme of things of, you know, people vacationing in, you know, Panama City Beach or something. It's, you know, you got to leave.
Yeah, for real. You have to react really quickly. Going back to some questions here, Jennifer asking about Pinellas County schools. I look on their website. They are saying that they're continuing to monitor the weather, but as of right now, all Pinellas County schools and the school district office locations are operating on a normal schedule right now. And that's not a shock, really, because we're mostly going to see the winds and the rain more so than anything. So, I mean, rightfully so that they're kind of monitoring everything, but compared to folks in the Panhandle, it is a night and day difference.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm sure every coastal county school is shut down up in the Panhandle. It's not something. In fact, I'd kind of be raising eyebrows if already they were saying we're shutting down school. There's not a reason at this point. What we need to watch for is possible isolated flooding later today. But in terms of storm surge numbers, we're only looking at most of the area probably about 2 feet above normal. Factor that in around high tide. Yes, it could cause some minor flooding, and there could be some areas where, you know, we kind of get that really pushed up in there, and 4 feet maybe, but we're just not going to see the same impacts that they are up in the Panhandle, or, you know, even into Georgia, where they're going to see a wind threat there on top of this. So just lots of very specific threats in very specific areas, and for us, we're really not seeing the worst of this.
And a good question coming in from Robin, because we haven't really even talked about the Keys. They're wondering what type of impact Michael will have on the Keys.
Okay, so a lot of those impacts have been going on for quite a while. Let me just go ahead and pop this up. So the Keys are down here. You know, some of those extreme southern bands may still bring a little rain, and still, you know, elevated sea levels up that way, especially on the southern edges of the Keys, but the Keys were getting impacted by this yesterday, not so much today.
Good. And Tracy, you actually just hopped in at a good time because we were just talking about the Keys. So Tracy and Robin kind of thinking on the same wavelength there. So that's really good. And then Peach McIntyre, she is writing in from Tampa and asking, why is it so windy? It's making a whistling sound.
There's a hurricane in the Gulf.
Well, no, I'm glad you hopped on here with us, Peach, because if you have any other questions, you know, we're getting a lot of good dialogue here. So hopefully if you're having more questions about what's going on in the Tampa area, things like that, we'll be able to answer that for you. But that is why it is so windy in Tampa, because we are talking about Michael. He is full swing here. Let's see. We got someone, Sabrina, asking about Santa Rosa County. Michael kind of impacting that specific area.
So I have heard that. I'm trying to place exactly where that is on a map, but I know there are evacuation orders that are in place for coastal areas of Santa Rosa, and hurricane warnings as well.
Okay, good one coming from Mary Jo. She is writing in from Winter Haven. What about Michael for the Winter Haven?
You're in a more inland spot, which means you don't deal with the coastal flooding, but we can't completely rule out some heavy rain that could cause some local issues in regards to, you know, maybe some road closures, maybe some minor flooding, something like that. You're not expected to see much rain for the next 6 hours or so. The inland rain chances go up as we head into the afternoon. This has to start to kind of make that easterly turn before we see rain. Up until then, it's going to be areas west of I-75 that are going to get the heavier rainfall totals through the morning.
Awesome. Well, really good questions. You guys keep them rolling in. I'm going to keep a close eye on that because we're answering your questions here on Facebook Live and on our broadcast in real time. So Ashley's going to keep you updated on the weather, and we'll have a little bit more on air. So I'm going to go hop on the broadcast. All right. Thank you.
Actually, we're on air right now if you're watching. We're pulling up Bo Zimmer, who's in Tallahassee this morning, and actually doesn't look too bad there right now, but not a lot going on. And they're in Tallahassee. We took a conference call with them this morning, and we ruled out a lot of safe places for them to be. So they just decided, okay, we're going to stay inland. We're going to more monitor things like winds, and there likely will be some flooding in that area. But the storm surge was just too big a concern for us to put our crews there. So he's a little bit further inland, reporting, it looks like, from one of the shelters in Tallahassee. Here is a look at Michael. I'll go ahead and zoom it in a little bit and kind of show you the structure of the storm. A well-defined eye there, and this is still moving to the north at about 13 miles an hour. By next check at around 8, we probably will see this start to more move to the north-northeast, so not a significant jog yet. We're going to slowly kind of start to have it make this turn, but once it makes landfall, it's going to pick up some forward speed. Thankfully, this is not a slow mover. If it were, we'd be looking at even more significant flooding threats, and those sea levels would continue to rise for even longer. But what we're getting right now is those outer bands that are already starting to impact Tallahassee, or areas just south of Tallahassee, rather, and even over toward Tampa Bay. We're seeing the outer bands from this, and that is going to continue for several hours more, especially for points west of I-75 before we get a little bit of a break as things shift inland. But through the day today, the Bay Area should be aware, hey, there's going to be several rounds of rain. It's going to be windy, and if you're right along the coast, there could be some flooding as well. We've actually got Jenny Dean out right now in Madeira Beach, which is in western Pinellas County, and those water levels are definitely running above normal. And she did say there was one report of some minor flooding at John's Pass. So I'm kind of watching video right now.
So from your question, we'll talk about storm surge, because it looks like, what is that?
Okay, so you want an explainer. Got that. All right, so we're about to go on air with a storm surge explainer. So we'll talk more about that in just a few seconds.
They didn't like the other way.
Farther north from where Pennsylvania was, there's even more water in the streets. It's more of a concern, I would say. So let's check in with Sarah. Sorry, she's in Citrus County. Sarah, good morning. What are you seeing there with regard to storm surge? Anything yet?
Is Rob like tossing to me out of G28?
We've got one of our reporters, Sarah, up in Citrus County right now, and doesn't look like the flooding is terribly bad there, but definitely elevated water levels.
Common. That storm surge is a very serious issue. Let's take you back live to Panellas, seeing the tops of those palm trees starting to blow around a little bit right now. People there being told to evacuate. Despite those dire warnings, police say there were more than a few people who simply are refusing to leave. CBS News is there right now. You can look for live updates here on 10 News with Jeff Moore a little bit later this morning on CBS This Morning. CBS also has live crews up and down the Panhandle and in the Big Bend area of Florida where this storm is expected to make landfall. Live coverage starts at 7 o'clock this morning. Governor Rick Scott will also be live with an update on CBS This Morning. That should happen around 8:05. His next scheduled briefing will follow that at 9 a.m. Ari?
Thanks, Rob. We're keeping you updated on all things Hurricane Michael on air and online. You guys are asking some really good questions on our Facebook Live. I wanted to go ahead and mention Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas County schools and their district office locations are operating on a normal schedule. That's a reoccurring question we're seeing on social media, and I'm here at the social media desk with 10 News meteorologist Ashley Beatty. Ashley, some other things that folks are really wanting to get more explanation on is the storm surge. Kind of tell us about that.
Right, so we're talking about these numbers of storm surge that are 9 to 13 feet in parts of Florida. Thankfully, that's not what we're dealing with here. But basically what this is when we get a storm in the Gulf or over any body of water, as it moves, it's carrying all that water with it. It's an area of low pressure, so that in and of itself is going to cause a little bit of this water to rise. But then we get these winds that have been trailing the storm for hundreds of miles typically, and then it's bringing all of that water with it. Well, that water has to go somewhere. So when it makes landfall, that area of low pressure is going to push that right toward the coast. And when we see the center of this storm moving over land, that's when it tends to kind of get all this deposited, and then we get this surge of water that moves over inland, and this is what we evacuate for. When we see evacuation orders, it's not for winds, it's not because it's a Category 2 or Category 3, and we cannot stress that enough. It is for flooding, it is for dangerous storm surge. When we go on school visits, we always tell the kids, you hide from wind, you run from water. This is why we evacuate you, because 13 feet, that's over the roof of your house.
Yeah. Definitely some information to keep in mind too. Thank you so much, Ashley. And keep your questions coming on our Facebook Live. We'll keep you updated online and on air as well. Rob.
It is 6:10 on Wednesday.
All right. So I know folks that have been with us on Facebook might have seen that explainer before, but just a good understanding there. As that storm moves, it carries a lot of water with it, and when it moves over land, it's got to go somewhere. So that's what we issue evacuation orders for. It's not because it's a Category 4 versus a Category 1. It's how far inland and how high do we expect that storm surge to be. Thankfully for the Bay Area, we are not seeing 13 feet of storm surge, but we're going to get elevated water levels. So coastal flooding we've been talking about this morning, and that's where we've got our reporters out there that are monitoring, hey, those water levels are rising, and then when we factor in high tide, we get that on top of those already elevated levels.
Yeah, and they're doing a great job of keeping a close eye on that. We're still getting a lot of questions about school closure, so I'm gonna
just
reiterate
kind of go through your list again.
I'll reiterate that again. So Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas County Schools, the schools and school district office locations, all operating on a normal schedule. So I want to see, because I saw that question pop up from Lorena, is it safe to send children to school in Hillsborough County?
Yes.
So I want to make sure you guys know about that. Giselle asking about Pasco. Yes, that school district and their district office locations are going to be operating on a normal schedule. So you guys got that. And then let's see here. Pam wanting to know when they will see the wind pick up in Ocala. Am I saying that?
Ocala. So that's
so
that's a little bit farther inland. No problem. You know, it always takes you got to learn those little nuances.
Right.
Everywhere you're from, there's always that one town that it's like, how do you say that? So don't feel bad. And we've got several of those around here. You're going to, Lutz will trip you up, and there's always a handful. So Ocala is a good ways inland. So you're going to see the possibility of some inland flooding later on today. It'll be localized. It's not something that's going to be area-wide, but just be aware that if we see some heavy rain moving over the same points time and time again, there could be some spots where that's something that you deal with. So aside from that, gusty winds. Really, it is not going to be a significant wind event for us. It's going to be a breezy day, and it's going to remain that way. It's not just, hey, it's a little gusty as a thunderstorm's going to come through. It's going to be a little more continuous than that. But beyond that, just be aware that there is an outside possibility of that, and can't completely rule out an isolated tornado threat. That's really going to be more for folks closer to the coast. I can't rule out a stray waterspout coming on shore, but our odds of that are still less than 5%. Bigger issues with flooding, much more so than any wind event like tornadoes or just even damaging straight line winds.
Gotcha. Okay, let's see here. So we have some other questions coming in. Dottie writing in saying that her brother is driving from Georgia to Florida right now.
I don't know where in Georgia and where in Florida, but
okay, gotcha.
Hopefully he's being smart, and if there's any roadways that are flooded, turn around, don't drown.
Yeah, that's good, because I think Dottie was either you were just telling us, or I don't know if you could.
I don't know if there was a question there, but
back in if you had a question about
this part of Georgia between this part of Florida, that's just fine. Yeah. There's no issues there. If you're trying to get into the Panhandle, that I would say that's an awful idea.
Yeah, like don't do that one.
So I got a question about Pensacola, because she's asked about 6 times, so I just want to kind of make sure I address that. So Pensacola is west of where we're expecting this storm to make landfall. Still, you're already getting some of these really heavy bands of rain that are coming on shore. Here's Pensacola right now in some of those outer bands. The storm surge threat is less than what we're seeing to the right of this storm, because when we're on the east side of these storms, we've had those southerly winds that have been dragging this water up for hundreds of miles in some cases. For you, what's causing it is just the bands themselves and the forward momentum of the storm itself. So your numbers will be lower. However, coastal areas of Pensacola still 6-7 feet storm surge. It's significant there, and on top of that, you're likely to see, if not hurricane force winds, certainly tropical storm strength for an extended period of time.
Definitely. No, that's good. Yeah, a lot of folks were asking about Pensacola. Christine. Okay, gotcha. Then we have Carmen asking about Michael's impact in Calhoun County. What are you thinking about Calhoun?
So is this Georgia, Florida?
Um,
we'll kind of just do a broad
yeah,
stroke.
we'll do that. Yeah.
If you're not a coastal county,
Mhm.
you do not have to worry about storm surge flooding. That's one thing you can flat out rule out. If you are under a hurricane warning, if you are under a tropical storm warning, winds are. With a hurricane warning especially, things like if you're in a mobile home, you need to leave it. Don't be driving out in it.
Yeah.
That can cause some pretty significant problems, and you're probably going to be driving through bands of really heavy rain on top of that. So what we're going to see for areas well inland is the threat of freshwater flooding. So heavy rain falling over the same areas time and time again. That's the same threat we're expecting for the Tampa Bay area. It'll be local. It won't be a widespread threat unless you're in basically the Panhandle or in southwestern Georgia. That's where we're going to see a lot of this moisture just coming out. So aside from that, that's your big threat. You just got to look out for local flooding.
Gotcha. And then we have Melanie joining in. She's asking about school closures. So for folks who are just joining in, we'll kind of talk about that again. Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas County schools all open. District office locations all operating on a normal schedule. They are continuing to say on social media that they're monitoring everything, but as of right now, Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas on a normal school schedule at this point. So it is safe to send the kids to school, Melanie. And then let's see here. Helen asking about Crystal River and a surge impacting Crystal River area, for her just popping in when we...
Right. So we actually had one of our reporters, Sarah Rosario. She is actually up in Crystal River.
Yeah.
And we just checked in with her a few minutes ago. Did not look like there was any significant impacts yet.
Yeah.
Those water levels will continue to rise, and high tide is going to occur again later on this afternoon. At that point, we're going to have a little more push from these southerly winds that will kind of keep those water levels steadily rising. So what we're looking for is probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 feet for coastal areas in Citrus County. Zone A is under an evacuation order. Nowhere else in the Bay Area are we seeing mandatory evacuation. There was one voluntary issued for, I believe it was either Western Pasco or Hernando, and I brought this up twice. I really, for the life of me, don't remember which. But even that was just for Zone A, and that was voluntary. So extremely low-lying areas if folks there feel unsafe. Okay, not the worst idea, maybe kind of, head a little bit farther inland, but large-scale evacuations are not something we have to worry about in Tampa Bay or in most of our viewing area. It is just Citrus, just Zone A.
Gotcha. Well, you guys keep your questions coming in here on Facebook Live, because this is where I'll be kind of pulling the questions that we ask on air as well with Ashley. So I'm going to hop back onto the broadcast, and Ashley can kind of give an update on where things are right now.
All right. So if you're just popping on, let's kind of start where we like to start with the numbers on Michael. It is a hurricane. It is a Category 4 hurricane. Winds right now are up to 140 miles an hour. So at this point, we did get a 6 o'clock update. So between now and landfall, we're likely going to see these hourly updates from the National Hurricane Center. I don't expect any big changes to these numbers for the next several hours. And I did field a couple of questions earlier on about, hey, is there a possibility this could become a Category 5? It's very unlikely. We would have to see a significant amount of strengthening in a very short period of time. But we are likely to see this maintain Category 4 strength for several hours more. And after landfall is when we're going to expect this to significantly weaken in terms of our winds. Here's the deal. It, as does any storm, especially one of this magnitude, carries a lot of moisture with it. So we're going to see a lot of rain. In fact, over the next couple of hours, I would expect to start seeing some reports of flooding coming out of the Panhandle especially. Even local reports here in the Tampa Bay area, because we're starting to see those sea levels rising and we're seeing these rounds of rain moving over parts of Pinellas especially. Do be aware, local flooding could be possible over the next few hours. The focus, though, will be areas along the coast, and I've got the track overlaid there. It looks like the center of this is moving right toward Panama City, but from about Horseshoe Beach to the west, that's where we're going to see significant sea level rises. I'm not talking 2 to 4 feet the way we're seeing in the Bay Area. We're talking 6, 8, 10 feet, up to 13 in some localized spots. So hopefully folks in those areas really took evacuation orders seriously. This is not one folks in the Panhandle want to mess with. And we were talking a couple of days ago how, you know, we kind of tackle problems with this when people don't take, you know, a Category 1 hurricane, for example, seriously. Well, in this case, it rapidly intensified, and now we're seeing this Category 4 storm sitting just 100 miles offshore. When we see a setup like this, where there's minimal wind shear, where there is a lot of warm water to tap into, that's its energy source. That's what these storms feed off of. You can see these rapid intensifications, and that's what we've gotten. A couple of people have said, like, it came out of nowhere. No, that's not true. We were watching this in the Caribbean for several days, but what it did do is intensify. It got its act together very quickly. So it kind of seems in some ways that, oh, suddenly this was, you know, blowing up my feed, and that has more to do with how quickly it strengthened after we had been keeping an eye on it in the Caribbean. So that was actually sitting in the Caribbean for several days before it even really became you know, what we call an invest, or basically just, you know, an area, hey, we're paying really close attention to this now. And then ultimately Tropical Depression 14, and now we went through the motions and we're up to a Category 4 storm. Let me pop up our local radar. Rob, are you snapping at me? No? Are you trying to get my attention?
No.
Okay. I heard snapping. Well, you have it now.
Are you Facebook Live?
I am Facebook Living, so everyone on the internet is hearing this delightful conversation between us. I am getting a lot of questions. Yeah, people are interested. All right. All right, so winds locally still have not been terribly gusty just yet. In Tampa, about 23 miles an hour for the gusts. So they're starting to pick up. And our concern for a couple of marks is hitting 40, because at that point, the Sunshine Skyway will be shut down. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, show you a little bit better what's going on. Now, these, by and large, are just sustained winds, but the smaller numbers you see to the right and kind of that blue color, those are our wind gusts, and those are starting to pick up along the coast. Over into Venice, 26 mile an hour gusts, 24 up in Clearwater. And on top of that, you're getting some rain right now. So it is going to be a breezy day throughout the day today and into tomorrow for the Bay Area. More significant impacts to the north, and then we're still looking at those local flooding threats. So we do have the hurricane hunters out in this investigating what's going on with this storm. And I'll go ahead and zoom in to where they are. So they kind of fly in these figure 4 patterns. They punch through the eye wall. They go take measurements. They have these instrument packs called drop-ons that they send out of the plane. And as it falls, it gives us information about wind speeds. It gives us information about humidity levels, all these important things that we can put into models to have a better idea of what's going on. So I'm doing important work out there, and this will continue for several hours more until landfall, which we're expecting during the early afternoon hours near Panama City Beach. So it'll be east of Pensacola, west of Tallahassee, if you are kind of familiar with the area. So here is our latest track. Haven't been any significant changes, still a northward momentum, and it's going to start to veer a little bit to the north-northeast over the next few hours. And notice how quickly it's going to weaken as it moves onshore. But in the meantime, we're kind of bracing for some really significant impacts for folks that are along the coastline, especially up into the Big Bend area, and that's where we're looking at these storm surges between 9 to 13 feet in some cases. And Aubrey's been kind of checking in on school closures, things like that. No reports of school closures in the Bay Area except for Citrus County. Is that correct? That's the only closure we do have. That is closed for today, presumably open tomorrow. So keep checking back on that. But I would imagine they'll probably give the go-ahead to go back to school tomorrow. It's more concerns of storm surge flooding. Let's not get the kids on buses. Let's not worry about, you know, roads that are impassable, things like that. So that's probably their thinking behind why they just Okay,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and close school today. But they're expecting higher storm surge totals than anyone else in the Bay Area,
That
too.
is
They're
true.
looking more in that 4 to 5 neighborhood, and most of the Bay Area is more 2 to 3, which would cause much less of an issue.
Absolutely. And then we have Teresa. She just hopped on and asked about school closure, so that's why I said I would come on here and kind of reiterate. So she's specifically asking about Pasco County schools. So Pasco, Hillsborough, and then Pinellas are all operating on a normal school schedule right now, kind of piggybacking off what Ashley just said. And there were some good questions coming in. One from Annie. She's writing in from Tampa. She's wondering if the weather that she's seeing now, will it get much worse from what she's already experienced?
So in Tampa right now, the rain has been pretty light.
Yeah.
The winds are going to stay about where they are. They may pick up a little bit more. But we're actually kind of, if you look due west, the center of that storm is already past our latitude. So the winds aren't going to change much from here. What will is your rain threat. And I actually will go ahead and pop up our model, kind of show you roughly where we're expecting these showers and storms, because over the next few hours it definitely will be more of an issue for folks that are west of I-75. Sorry, I have to find out where these graphics got placed.
No, they're fine.
They keep disappearing. But the general trend while I look for this is for the next few hours through the morning, any flooding threat is going to be primarily west of I-75. As we head into about midday, those storms are going to shift a little bit farther to the east, and that's when Tampa, on the other side of the bridge, is likely going to see those showers and storms picking up.
Gotcha.
And then that will spread inland as we head through the rest of the afternoon. So here we go. Here's our high resolution model. So this is going to be really good for, hey, what's going on in the next 6 to 12 hours?
Oh, good.
Past that, it tends to get a little askew. So you can see the general trend through the morning commute is that the heavy rain bands are going to be along and west of I-75. Then we get into about 11, 12 o'clock, and that's going to shift a little bit farther inland. We're going to see breaks in this from time to time. You know, this is indicating, hey, mid-afternoon hours, there may not be much going on right over the Tampa Bay area, but then we're going to get another band of this as this moves to the east. So it's going to be the position of the storm is going to kind of shift these, because they're kind of set in terms of their distance from the center of the storm, but as that center shifts a little bit farther to the east, so do those rain bands. So through the morning, it's folks west of I-75 into midday, early afternoon, that becomes more along and just east of I-75, and our inland folks probably won't see a whole lot going on, but when you do, it'll be late afternoon into the evening hours.
Good, good. We're getting some more questions coming in here. Annette wanting to know, will Daytona Beach area see more so winds and rains kind of like us?
So yeah, they could get some bands of this, but their winds are probably going to be similar to, maybe a little lighter than ours, so they're not expecting a significant wind event with this one either. So I just got the sign from our red team saying, hey, we're going to briefly take a pause here. We're going to go ahead and shut down this Facebook Live. But in
great
about
questions.
I actually appreciate that they're coming in. And in the next few minutes, we're going to start another one. We're just going to do things like refill our cups of tea, stuff like that, and pop in, kind of give them an update in the newsroom. So we'll be back in just a few.
Thank you so much.
Look for another notification, and we're going to say bye for a few minutes for now.